time once again.
Good morning.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Yes, it's another
Good morning.
Another morning show. Tony Caravan with you on this March 1st. And as I pan the camera slowly, which is actually my entire monitor, which who knows what kind of damage this is going to do, you can see the Then What shirt, which, you know, I think I might keep this. Try to keep that in view. Because perhaps, just perhaps, just perhaps this may be the shirt of the week. You know, apart from wherever the heck it is. It's over here somewhere. I have to watch myself. Moving around here so much. Everything you know is wrong. All the stuff available on TonyCaravanLive.com. Or through it anyway. So as you can see from, if you clicked on this because of the title card, that means you probably are somewhat aware, whether it's first, second hand, third hand, or through some viral, social media, meme, that there was a speech last night at CPAC where Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, came out and made made some. It was part stump speech and elements of that, a few surprises thrown in there to get the media all riled up, which is, I'm sure, is like at this moment, well, not yet. It's only 4:40 in the morning, and you know how people are. Nobody gets up at me. And surprisingly for me, despite, it looks like it's going to be an all-day weather. Yesterday, I have a
Weekend weather.
Well, the weekend's over. I forgot to take the weekend off of that. But it's like 52 degrees here in the mid-Atlantic state region where I am. And it's supposed to get progressively colder as the day wears on. But it's raining like I don't know. And I told you I have a leaky roof. So I had rain coming all the way down into the into the bucket I had prepared as an emergency case. Kind of like what a Rube Goldberg type of device alternative, where I patched the inside of the roof in the attic, caulked it, had some buckets or like cat litter boxes there to catch anything in case that didn't work. Then the roof of my bedroom the room below the attic, I have a kind of a contraption and with a plastic thing across, and then that's angled down so that in case all of those fail safes fail, that it channels anything that would make it through those various two roofs and whatever into a bucket. And sure enough, yesterday I was laying in bed and I heard dripping into the bucket. And it's raining today. And it's wintertime. And everything's wet. And there's no way I could caulk and wetness and fix this. And don't tell me about it's liquid rubber in a can or something like that. I tried that stuff. Doesn't work. Doesn't really work. I don't know. these guys become multimillionaires saying this stuff, and maybe in the exact weird conditions that they are in, it works. But when you try it in real world conditions, it didn't work for me. So that's something to talk about. So anyway, I mean, that's why I'm just half awake. I was going to do some caffeine today. Update on the old health situation. It's like, it's too early in the morning. I feel tired. Still not completely better. A couple pains in the abdomen still. I didn't take my temperature. But I don't feel like I have a fever. And let's see if we can find this thing. Then what? Don't worry, we're going to get into it. Hang in there, folks. This is the morning show. This is how we usually start things up. And if you have to move away because you're anxious for some real active content, come back. But remember,
same time, same station.
We're here every morning. And of course, it's always after the show, it's always available for posterity until they take it down. This particular title may be controversial to some. I don't know if this, I'm gonna lower myself. This thing is supposed to be facing the heart. Like at the level of your heart in order to get your blood pressure properly tested. So we're testing blood pressure live on the air. And see what we got.
Here's what's happening.
It's taking longer than usual. Batteries might be dying. 90 over 62. No irregular heartbeat and a heart rate of, well, actually, you could be able to see that. Let's see. It's 90 over 52, and the bottom number is the heart rate. 58. Now, that, my friend, if you look there, the dark green, shine a little light on it. Dark green is ideal. So above 60, below 120. So while it's a little bit low, it's not low heart. It's in what's called the ideal. What do they call it? Ideal blood pressure. Other idea, heart attack warning signs, chest discomfort, got that. Discomfort in other areas of the upper body. Well, shortness of breath, had that. Other signs may be breaking into a cold sweat, nausea, and lightheadedness. One theory is that I had a heart attack while I was shoveling snow, but somehow it was like a minor heart attack or stroke. And I survived.
Good morning.
Anyway, I went to bed yesterday around 7 o'clock-ish or something like that. Woke up today at 3 something. 7 to 3, that's 8 hours of sleep, more or less. Woke up twice as usual in the middle of the night. Not completely clear-headed right now, but I don't know. I guess I don't feel as bad as I felt maybe a week ago. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. I may or may not call the doctor today, but I know all they're going to do is check my temperature, blood pressure, and then maybe say, oh, you need to go get some tests. I really don't want to get any tests. I don't want any more radiation. Cancer survivor so far, knock on wood. Last thing I need is for them taking chest x-rays, CT scans, and irradiating me. Might as well become a I'd be like out of the last scene in Repo Man, right? When the guy was glowing and the car was glowing. Craziness. So anyway, let's get back to the topic, the title card. Let's stick with that. It's not clickbait. It's what we're going to talk about. I don't like talking about politics, but this isn't necessarily politics. Remember, politics is now the new pop culture. So, so Trump comes out, and I didn't see the very beginning of it. I was talking with my 87-year-old mother who's living in a assisted living facility down in Florida. It's basically under quarantine. She doesn't want to take the shot, but I guess my sister and my brother are giving her a hard time, giving an old woman a hard time. I mean, she's made it to 87. She's got other problems and stuff like that. She's isolated, and she doesn't want it, and I don't know. She's scared of it. Not that the current administration didn't add to anything like that. If you recall, back in when news that these things were coming out had hit, they were downplaying it and trying to say we're not. I wouldn't trust any vaccine from Trump or something. Hypocrites. So anyway, Trump came out. He was looking pretty good. He obviously got arrested. He looked 10 years younger. And like I say, apart from basically, if you didn't see the entire speech, because I'm sure obviously the news media is not going to tell you anything, give you the real, breakdown of it. I'm not going to show clips because I can't. I have this live setup. It's like what you see is what you get. So if I blow my nose, I have to blow my nose on the air. But he basically, like I said, it was part Trump rally stump speech, as they say, and part criticism of Biden, what the Biden administration is doing, and kind of almost an I told you so, but in not such a cocky way, just in kind of, I think he said what a lot of people were thinking and wanted to hear. I guess the headlines today will be that, he, alluded that, of running again in 2024. I personally don't think he will necessarily, but it's hard to say with him, it is. It's really hard to say. Especially, like I say, looking at the guy last night, I mean, he looked refreshed and renewed, and, it was interesting, he wasn't the orange man either, he wasn't made up, didn't have like the makeup and stuff like that. He looked just like he looked like he did maybe 6 years ago. It was an interesting thing to get a chance to if there's a glimpse it. But I guess the takeaway was that he litanized all of the things that are going on now. Of course, he was speaking before a conservative audience. I mean, that's what CPAC is. It's 100%. That's what C stands for, and so obviously that crowd would have, that's what they want to hear. And it goes back to my saying about we don't live in the United States anymore. We just live in the States. Because, you can't be united when you have that many, millions, 100 million people, basically just totally disagreeing with, say, another 100 million people. If that, though, it's hard really to tell, to take the so-called pulse of the country right now. Oh, and the other thing that's really going to be making the news, I'm sure, like I say, I don't have TV, so, but, you don't have to have sixth sense to know this. Was it apart from them nitpicking and fact checking that he was on crazy things? Is they'll go because he talked about the election, all right, and different thing, that stuff, and then, which is verboten on the media and internet. So I wonder how many Twitter accounts and stuff like that will be taken down today because people try to retweet or repost segments of that, whatever. It's interesting. And like I said in my broader description under this video, that we're somewhere in between the Twilight Zone and a surrealistic nightmare right now in this country. And the absurdity of it, is can't get any more absurd. I'm talking with my mother, who talks to other people in her building. Interesting enough, it was a thing where even she said that, because I said, things are just like just crazy, like not right. Everything's like the word out of control isn't the right word. It's like just something's wrong. It's like in that Legends of Tomorrow, there was a scene where these the Fates, these three sisters, based on mythology, that's mostly I think it was a Marvel comic originally, that was based on legends, that the Fates, oftentimes they base their stuff on actual mythology. Thor, obviously, based on mythology and stuff like that. A lot of these superheroes were based on that kind of thing. But there was this thing where the Fates somehow had used, say, one of the Fates was on this, there were three sisters, and one of them was on the side of these legends, these people that they kept time together, they like repaired time anomalies and just got involved in different adventures. It was fairly lighthearted series, but if you want to, it's a Netflix thing. I don't know if it should still be on. I don't know if it's staying this month or not, but it's one of those things. And it brought in heroes, so-called Marvel superheroes from different other individual shows. And sometimes they, it was always neat when they'd merge sometimes, where like, one superhero from this show would merge with one from this show and all that kind of stuff. When Stan Lee was alive, they were really good at doing that kind of thing. I think I think Disney getting control, if they don't have control of Marvel, they have control of Netflix. Excuse me. And Stan Lee no longer being with us, that I just don't think we're going to see the quality coming out of superhero flicks. They'll mostly be, and they've already done it. They've already gone extreme into the SJW stuff, so that it's so, that the story gets bogged down. Trying to interject this so-called political correctness, which is really political incorrectness, in their efforts to inject that into the storyline. In effect, when you're dealing with a half hour or an hour show, which really is only like, 20 some minutes or 40 some minutes. It's when you have to inject things in, you inevitably end up taking things out. and only some of the best writers out there, and there aren't that many. This is a little quick aside, and then we'll get back to this Fates thing. The thing about it, there aren't that many really good writers out there. And if you've ever were watching a show, a series, and you notice that like the first season, it was like outrageous, or maybe the first season, it wasn't outrageous, but you got hooked into it. And then you noticed that it started getting better. And maybe that's because the ratings were putting up and they decided to bring in some writers, steal some writers from somewhere else. And then the second season was like a mind blower, totally blew your mind. And you couldn't wait for the third season to come along. Then the third season came along and it was a dud, but then there was another show. And what happens is there's this handful of good writers, and a lot of them are getting older now too. That's the whole thing. That's what I'm saying. Like the loss of Stan Lee was really a true tragedy to American pop culture. I mean, that's real pop culture. This idea that politics is pop culture is so disheartening. It's just because pop culture is pop culture. But yeah, Stan Lee's death was really a loss to pop culture. And he was good, and he. Yeah. Anyway, so these Fates, one of these sisters was involved with the Legends at one point, so she was on their side. So when she made some kind of deal with her other two sisters when they decided to like decide the fate of humanity and turn humanity into some sort of totalitarian, I wouldn't call it state, world existence. And what she did to save the Legends was put them on TV shows, that the people watched, so they were forced to be characters, lost their memory, and they became like characters on pseudo shows that were like copies of maybe Friends or other shows like that. I mean, it was interesting and it was entertaining and all of that kind of thing. And, but there was in this particular and this is all in an episode. It might have continued into another episode, but it was like basically one episode this happened. That did continue into another episode. It was right towards the very end of the whole series too. That there's this scene, and I wish I could pop it up. I actually have it on my Minds page, I think. And there's this guy, it's a couple of people starting to figure it out. And there's a guy standing in front of this crowd coming out of some factory that's making this goop that people are eating for food. It's like the Fates were trying, totally made a mockery and humiliated, everybody in the world, where they were just eating like, this goop for food and watching this. It was just, I don't know. It's kind of like the direction we're heading right now, this world. But there's this guy standing with the placard type of sign on, you stand and you have the sign in front of you and behind you, and you're just standing there. So you are the sign type of thing. And the sign says, "The world is wrong." All right. And, let that sink in. And that's pretty much the way I view, watching the CPAC thing section. I mean, I was curious to see, Trump. And since it was on YouTube, I don't have TV. And I wasn't even going to watch it. I was actually in the middle of watching some Australian series with Anna Torv from the girl from Fringe, if you remember that show, which was a really good show. They don't make shows like that anymore that are just based on, on science and taking your mind into some kind of really thought-provoking, critical thinking, or just whatever. everything's so injected with this some kind of propaganda, politicized nonsense that it's like I say, it's hard. You can't be pure to something with that much pressure on you to just keep throwing in these things. But I was going to just watch that. And then I just, like I said, I happened to be talking. My mother called me on the phone. And she was, I guess, going to watch this Trump thing and was killing time before it came on. So we talked. And so then I thought, all right, well, I'll, since she reminded me of it. And I actually, as it turned out, I had seen this series before. But, it's a weird thing when you binge watch. I don't know if this happens to you, but if you binge watched a series a couple of years ago, I don't know if it's something with the human mind or not. Taking so much in back to back, right? When binge watching, I mean, you're watching like 5 episodes, nonstop, sometimes more. That you kind of, your memory isn't set up, to hold that data. It's like it almost has to let it go because it's coming at it so fast. I mean, I guess if you were a savant, and I guess if there was a way of, opening up the recesses of your mind, it's there. The data is there, just like, because just like somebody with a photographic memory is just someone that basically has that total recall. Not to say that the data isn't stored in our brains, just that we don't seem to be able to access it the way a savant or somebody with the so-called photographic memory has. Like it's not so much, that guys like Da Vinci and Einstein were so much different than us, though the so-called study of some of the cells of Einstein's brain, that story, some guy apparently had pieces of Einstein's brain in like a jar in the back of his car for 10 years or something like that. But in analyzing his brain was that the tissue had not aged or broken down the way the normal process does. Though wondering that it may be something that was in a preservative for that long a period of time, I never heard the discussion on whether or not that could have also, been a factor in why this stuff looked a certain way. It's like kind of pickling an egg. You know what I mean? The question is, if the egg wasn't pickled, would it be as, crisp and, not crisp so much, but, as fresh as it was, even though it was in the refrigerator in vinegar and red beet juice for, weeks. Otherwise, it would have just rotted. But so, yeah, I forgot that. I was watching this thing and it's like, it was familiar and and things are coming back to me. But how it's almost like, even though it was a thriller, it's kind of like some kind of thriller thing, that I'm not the type of person to ever watch a thriller or something. I don't want to know the end of the story. Right. Somebody does one of those things, the old spoiler alert type of stuff. It's like, okay, you ruined it for me. I'm not interested, because it's not, like some people say, oh, it's the journey to get there. No, it's the journey, but you want, you're taking that journey for what's at the rainbow's end. It's not just the adventure. So yeah, I was content to just keep watching that. And then she reminded me, so I watched it. So I decided, okay, this morning I'll talk about this for a little bit. And, and apart from, as it says on my title card, which is at the bottom part seems to have broken off a little bit where it says Tony C. But apart from the inefficiencies of the GUI, as I call it, of the internet and all of these tens of thousands of people working for these various companies that make this thing possible, their their lack of interest in putting in all kinds of little extra things. When I was first on the internet, it's like we used to, you're constantly were tweaking your pages, and your pages were the GUI, the graphic user interface back then, because they didn't have it. A lot of people had what was called a BBS. All right. And that was like a bulletin board service. And it was like the old IBM green and white paper printouts where they would print out somebody's face or some sign based on zeros and ones or just letters and stuff. Very primitive looking things, and the graphics were very, very primitive. And since I was in the graphics and had a printing background, I was one of the early guys who was actually creating, dynamic graphics on the internet. This is back in the 90s. And so, but in those days, that wasn't easy, because first of all, you had, the earliest versions of HTML and various browsers, so that, and very limited memory and very low bandwidth. So you were working against like 4 or 5 things, right? You didn't have JavaScript, and, like I say, you were connecting with a modem through a phone line. The browsers you didn't have a lot of RAM, which it was called there. Now it's like DRAM. Processing speeds were very slow. The software programs themselves weren't allocated enough memory, and you couldn't overpack them. Otherwise, they would crash that way too. A lot of crashing, a lot of freezing, a lot of restarting. Anyone who was doing the internet back then, or just even working with computers, knows about that. A lot of restarting, a lot of freezes, a lot of hitting a combination of certain keys to do certain things. And so for the code writer back then, the person creating websites, all right, or the GUI, the original GUI, because all apps is an evolution of the original websites. It's just like, in fact, the first generation, I did a show on this where I held up some things. I don't know where I have them now, that I was actually listed on the Apple website, because when Steve Jobs first put out the idea of, he was talking about Internet 2.0, and some people were laughing at him for that. But it was the idea that when he had the iPod, the iPhone size iPod thing, and it might have even just been the iPhone itself, that he was putting a call out there to people that were designing web pages to design them for, and he, publicly gave you the parameters, the stats, and the things to do, so that when you would open it up on an iPhone or go to that URL, there would be the icon that is now people know as the app, icon. And that was a thing, and how to code that in your meta, and have that in your metadata, in your header, and various other things. So it would size properly to the size of the smartphone, to the iPhone, or, whatever. And that's how it was. And we were all into that stuff. And that was the beginning. And then, then people they realized in meetings that they could make money off this by creating this whole Apple developer, insanity, and get people to, pay, for apps and create the App Store. And then, well, from there's history. Not going to repeat what you know. But back in those days, we spent an awful lot of time developing websites. It was, and to make everything perfect. So when I look at, I'm on YouTube's live streaming page, studioyoutube.com/video, and some numbers that are individual to me /live streaming. All it is a web page. It's like I used to tell people this, when I quit Facebook years and years ago, but I was one of the first guys on it when it first came because I was always interested in the newest thing. But then when I realized what it was about, I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here. This is just data mining. But I used to tell people, I go, you're making a big deal about a web page. And I said, they have all these employees. What do you think those employees are doing? It's just a web page, and it's a rather clunky web page. It still is to this day. It's the same with Twitter. Twitter is just a web page. I invented a version of Twitter before Twitter was ever out because the basis was, it's used to call open source code. And the whole idea of having a thing where you could put up, a person's name, or a title with an icon or something, and then a block with so many characters, a comment block, right? And then add an image, and then post it, and then have someone comment to it. That's basically built upon what you call open source code. And I had something like that, like in the 90s, I was messing around with that stuff because I was going to add it to one of my websites because I had the music. I had a lot of music websites. I was broadcasting back then, and I had some automated format stations. And yeah, so I used to say that to people. I go, you're making a big deal, and somehow they're paying these people six figures, and they have thousands and thousands of employees in different offices and stuff. And I'm going, all it is it's a chunk of code and a website. Yeah, you need a server farm and you need bandwidth, but I mean, that's nothing. Anybody could do that. And so I always said, what really got me. Angered me at that time. I don't get angry anymore about stuff like that, but bothered now is that they don't focus. There's no focus on improving the interface. I mean, every now and then they do something and it's like some kind of silly eye candy-ish thing or something. It's like there was a big deal about when they, everything's gone dark, right? Dark mode and, all that. We were doing that in the 90s. You used to be able to do that in the 90s. It wasn't new. I was always surprised me. There was because you always had there were either plugins or there were other things that you could get for your computer. If it wasn't a plugin for a browser, there were plugins for your computer that you could do all kinds of really neat things for. And you can develop, you were able to, anybody could be a developer and add to these things. And I used to have one that was way better than anything I see now. Because it wasn't just dark. There was you had about 7 or 8 different choices, and there was dimension. You could add dimension to them, and really tech them out. Something out of a sci-fi movie type of thing, and really mess with the colors, and everything. So when I always say we're de-evolving. Because these interfaces, the same reason why I can't just take my mouse right now and, drag an image or hit insert picture and have a picture show up right here on this, have picture in picture show up right here on this side of the screen while I'm talking, right? There's no reason why they can't do that. They're just sitting around laughing and giggling in some conference room when they finally go to work today, drinking their Starbucks coffee that they bought that's right on their own campus where they work, right? Instead of doing anything like that, and talking about things like how can we better control the flow of information, censor people, and come up with more nefarious or hidden ways to, silence free speech in America. And that, which basically, circles back to the CPAC thing and to the Trump thing. So yeah, he was in rare form. He was in good form. He was presented himself very well, was well spoken, and basically covered all the points you would expect to be covered, and he left a lot of optimism with the people, the attendees, and I'm sure there were hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people watching. But what I say is, and I don't want to be a spoil sport and a downer, and a negative, person on this. It's like, but to me, the way this will be spun in the media right now already, I'm sure it started on the other morning shows. This is the best morning show. So,
Good morning.
but on those network morning shows, unlike this one, they'll be talking about, childish criticisms and rehashing stuff that's been talked about and rehashed since November, right? November, December, January, February. All right. Now we're into March. 5 months. Okay. And they still can't, and they'll still be repeating the exact same Trump tripe, right? The idea of the matter is we no longer have a United States of America. And there is nothing that I believe can be done that's ever going to unite this country, especially with the fall of Western civilization due to the World Economic Forum, Davos set, and the Great Reset. And as we've seen in recent days, weeks, with the current administration, that every day that passes by, they are taking away some other avenue in which freedom of speech and the basics of the Constitution would be followed and or could be restored to people. And once you take a thing away, once you destroy the avenue, the road, is maybe a better word to say. In other words, it's as if they're falling trees on the road to a specific place and blasting rocks, on a mountain pass and a cave that's further down that road. And then 4 years will pass by, 3 years or whatever. And it's going to, between the rocks and the fallen trees and the dirt and the soil and erosion and rainfall and multiple fall, winter, spring, fall, winter, spring, fall, winter, spring, seasonal, this, that, the other. Looking at it from a distance, you would say, was there ever a mountain pass there? Was there ever a road there? It doesn't even exist. And so what's missing from the discussion, like I say, I don't care about the lies that'll be on TV for the next couple weeks. Like I say, Trump just gave them free content, and on both sides, for people to argue back and forth. Twitter's going to be a joke, but the television networks are going to be worse, and they're going to battle back and forth among each other. But meanwhile, this road, this path to freedom, so to speak, or whatever, is just being, is being destroyed, overgrown. And it's not a matter of somebody else coming into office or another election and someone getting their stack of executive orders and undoing this. In other words, you'd be talking about rebuilding the nation from scratch. It's not going to happen. As I said before, when empires fall, they fall. And what happens is, yes, there's the history is full of the rise and fall of civilizations. But the thing about that is that they don't the next civilization doesn't rise within the next couple of years. And you have to get it into your noggin, all right, that this civilization, Western civilization, has fallen. And the United States was the only thing holding Western civilization together. And this country is no longer united. And without a United States, there's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do. And so, yes, you still have a military. There'll still be, the economy will, it's a corporatocracy. All right. So that's the next generation. The technocrats wanted basically to bring on AI and man and machine merged into some Borg-like existence. That's their goal. That's what the people at Google, DeepMind and Ray Kurzweil and all those people. That's their belief. Immortality, through, implanting yourself into a machine. Elon Musk will have chips in people's brains within the year and stuff like that. We're going to be like Star Trek. We're going to go to Mars and then we're going to explore the planets. But they have no idea how they're going to do it. They don't have the technology, or any of that stuff. What they have, they're just boys playing with toys, right? That's what they are. They're rich kids, made their money on the internet when they made too much money than they should have, right? They were guys who got overpaid for websites, right? Like I said, I had 60 of them. Maybe at one point I had 100 of them back then. Half these people stole stuff from me and other guys because we were all into the open source stuff. Someone would ask me something in the HTML guild type of thing, and I would freely send them that block of code, how to do that thing. And, I don't remember names and who it was and whatever, but I see things all the time. I go, that was something I did back in 1994. And that company didn't rise until 1999 or 2002 or something. And I'm thinking, yeah, you stole it. But so what? Right? You only need to eat and have shelter over your head. So yeah, the breaking news of the day is that they just got another diversion away from the plague, right? So now they could, instead of talking about, the truth about that's everybody's concern. That was my concern, my mother's concern, and the older people down there. They were all wondering why they weren't getting the truth. Why the truth kept changing. what is this thing? No one really has ever explained, explained this to them. Was this thing a bioweapon? Why is this thing around, for 2 years? That's not how these things work. It's novel. Okay, what do you exactly mean by it's novel? Do you mean someone messed with it? And why did the couple of vaccines that came out that, from what I heard, but basically were more or less, it wasn't like they were developed in 9 months. They were like developed in a few weekends. These things were, and then it was the testing process and stuff that took time. This is just new technology that's basically we don't know anything about. And no one wants to talk about it. And no one wants to talk about what they call therapeutics and cures. And, which brings to question the idea is that, okay, if you're going to ask somebody to take a vaccine, maybe you ought to let them know that if they got it or something, there's something they can take, and in 2 days they're better. That's kind of like, that's another puzzling thing. So there's just too many questions. There's too many ideas. Don't wear a mask if you're social distancing. Wear a mask and social distancing. Now wear 2 masks, social distancing, and let's keep everything closed for the next couple of years. I think their idea is to keep things closed through the 2022 election. They think they might need another year or two to just like totally erase any possibility of the totalitarian state, of there being a second party. Because there is no Democrat Party anymore. It's just a corporatocracy. And they've taken over and they put these puppets in there. That's why you could have a guy who literally has dementia, doesn't take any questions, and when he answers them, he says stupid things that just don't make any sense. And the people supporting this, when they so-called fact check it, they just make some lame excuse. That was one of the better things about last night when Trump was asked he wasn't asked a question, but I mean, when he talked about how Biden said, when I took office, there was no vaccine. And then Trump reminded him that on December 21st or something, Biden himself was given the vaccine. And that 1 million, by the time Trump left office, the day before Trump left office, 1.5 million people a day were getting a vaccine. And by the end of the year, there was something like 20 or 40 million, I forget how many, had gotten a vaccine. So how do you get away with the president, a guy who has dementia, who basically didn't even realize, who said there was no vaccine when he took office, when he actually had it himself 2 months before he became assumed office, and that there millions of people were already, injected with it. So, this is where I say it's, we're in the twilight zone, heading toward a surrealistic nightmare. It's or both, or we're already there. We passed the twilight zone. Now we're in the surrealistic nightmare. And I don't see how you get out of that. It's like there was a movie once where, these people who do this lucid dreaming, and it's how the more you get into this mind control stuff, that the harder it is for someone who's in that, state, for them to see reality from what's a dream or what's not. It's like a drug induced, trip or something like that. And it seems to me that's what I'm saying. The world is wrong right now. It's like they've got this veil over top of everything. These rose-colored glasses that, instead of the true meaning of rose-colored glasses, mean like everything looks like beautiful, and all that stuff. No, it's like this crazed, insane thing. and more and more people are just getting high or escaping or on prescription drugs or whatever. So they don't have to deal with any of this stuff. And so they're just, going about their day. And now they're giving people money. And when this bill passes the Senate, assuming it does in this month, they're going to hand out $1,400, which, like I say, I'll take the money. I don't care at this point. I could use it. I'll use it to survive. I'll use it to fix things and do stuff. But they're going to give people, I'm older. I'm retired. See, and I've had some illnesses and stuff. But they're going to give people that, would normally be working or could be building their life, working towards something. They're going to extend, give them another $400, and where it's better to not get a job, not to work. You'll make more money if you stay home through July. So, I don't know. So in my mind is I can't see things continuing the way they are indefinitely, as far as from an economic standpoint. It just, there's too many people. It's as if they're trying to steal from the playbook of these old, Marx and Lenin and Mao's little book, or the old empires, feudalism and all these other forms of authoritarian totalitarianism, control of the people by a small group. And they're trying to do all of this stuff, and they're mixing in with it the computer, the mind control stuff. When I say mind control, I don't mean some woo-woo nonsense. I mean the idea of addiction, dopamine, hits. You're caught up. You can't get rid of your little precious, me precious, the black mare, as I call it. And that's the mind control, the addictions to these things, to this technology, and taking away of reality, not letting you know that being social means human contact. Doesn't mean social media, or, and that, people need to be together, So they're basically, but the problem is all of these things that they're copying from, all these little books and, isms that they're stealing parts from, existed in a time when you had small populations on the earth. Okay. Not, so to try to do that in a country the size of the United States, we have 330 million people. It just doesn't work, and it's not going to work. And that's why it's not the United States, even though, technically that's the name of the country. But it really is. It's just the states. It's just a geographical location. Their states are not united, and the people are not united, and they never will be. They are completely opposed to one another. And because of the mainstream media, the legacy media, and social media, whatever you want to call these things, we don't even really know if it's really split down the middle. We may be dealing with the situation where it's like, 10% at best. We know it's less than 1% are ruling the whole world. All right, we know that. That's a fact. That's Davos set. It's the World Economic Forum. These globalists. We know that's a fact. They don't hide that. Just turn on Bloomberg News, the financial news networks. They don't hide the fact that that the world is run. That they run the world. But what is hidden is the idea, is the impression that is given by the media and social media through their censorships, bannings, and erasing people and all that kind of stuff, is the idea of how many people really support this. Because the moment someone speaks out against it or calls it out, they seem to disappear. It's like, look how I'm choked. Like I've said so many times, but it bears repeating constantly. I can't have 7 views on a live video in a YouTube universe of literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of people worldwide, globally. I mean, there should be some random person from Sri Lanka clicking on this thing right now, just out of curiosity, right? Somebody in El Salvador, Mexico, Canadians, and some across the United States, Europe, right? Right now in Europe, it's still morning in Europe, technically, So, yeah. So that's what they do. And so, I don't know how long, and I'm not even, I'm abiding by the terms of service and playing by the rules. But, there are people who speak out and they vanish. I used to watch people, I subscribed to people who used to like go through and expose things, connect the dots, so to speak. They're vanished. They're erased. People today will never know they existed. The things they said are gone. Some of those people wrote books, but people don't read books anymore. And because they don't know who they are, they're surely not going to be put on some Kindle or Apple books like suggested reading list, or carried by those stores. They've probably already been banned from there too. So these people who have written books, done the research, have voluminous works of letting you know what the state of things as they are today, who have put, like I have hundreds of videos up, but who have had maybe 1,000 videos up detailing all this stuff, are gone, are erased. And so the question is, you have to say, is it a country divided? Right? Is it really a country divided? How do we know? We don't know that. Because every time someone who goes against this legacy, big tech corporatocracy, line of thinking, what they're trying to push on the people, they are erased. So that eventually, they just become, they're gone from the public consciousness. They're no longer available. We don't have you can't go to a library and find their book. They'd probably be banned from there too. It's crazy. Push the microphone away a little bit. So it's something to think about, and so as I watched that thing last night, I watched Trump at this CPAC thing. And, and like I said, it was a somewhat optimistic speech, from his standpoint and from the membership of that organization, which, like I say, they number in the tens of millions of people. But it was filled with hope and, but dreams, the stuff that dreams are made of, like from the Maltese Falcon, what is this thing? It's the stuff that dreams are made of, sweetheart. And that's all it is. You know, we're living in a surrealistic nightmare. You know, the lunatics have taken over the asylum. But the point is, people think the asylum is in charge. So it doesn't matter that the lunatics have taken over the asylum. That's a diversion from the fact that the corporatocracy are the puppeteers, and they're running this, this basic, world economic great reset, Davos globalist, hell, So all I say is what I try to end each video with is the idea that you are your own person, and that you have, however you want to say it, God-given rights, like they, is said in our founders' documents. And among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they can't take that away from you. They can cover that road, all right? Block that road to prevent any, in other words, they can destroy Western civilization and the empire is fallen and it cannot be rebuilt, and it's an impassable road. And those that are trying to pull the rocks and stuff like that, forget it. Because superheroes don't exist, and there's no one going to come through there with superpowers, X-ray vision, and super strength and pull these boulders and all these trees away from this, endless road to, back to what the United States was. Okay. You have to accept that. So what you have to do is live your life in the new paradigm. And I don't know if that's going to sink in with people, but the sooner it sinks in, the better. That you have freedom of speech like I have freedom of speech right now. Freedom of speech on Twitter, there is no freedom of speech on Twitter necessarily, but who cares about Twitter? What's going to change by being on Twitter other than like you getting a dopamine hit because you got some followers and likes? What change comes from Twitter? Nothing. They took Trump off of Twitter, right? And yet he still is considered like the leader of the conservative Republican movement. They don't have anybody else. So in effect, even with his tweets, it didn't really matter. The point is he's still there. And last night that's like I say, theme of this show. He basically proved that. But being that doesn't necessarily mean anything. All it does is it's an affront on social media, showing that they are meaningless, that Twitter is useless. And so all those people on Twitter today that are arguing back and forth and blah, 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 that's an exercise in futility. Because Twitter blocked the guy who last night they're talking about on Twitter, you see, and who didn't lose any stature. Only among this perceived media perception, as if, this idea that they're trying to present that there's people that are, think a certain way that they want to project. But we don't know that to be true because we can't believe anything we hear on the media. The media is a commercial media and they're owned by the corporatocracy. So they're just PR. And it's the same with, like, told you about politicians. The lunatics have taken over the asylum, but the asylum was never in control. So that's why it's so funny. And that's why you have to look at it. That's why you have crazy people like Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Nadler and the president who has dementia, right? I mean, they're crazy. They literally are the loony bin. It's a loony bin. The lunatics have taken over the asylum. But at least now you understand this is the corporatocracy and these arrogant people, most of these people based in Europe, laughing at Americans. They're saying, look at, well, we put lunatics in charge of their government, and these people are taking, the lunatics are running the asylum. They're just saying, look, don't you get it? You people never had any power. You never were in control. And all of these things you do are meaningless, because the only thing that matters is the financial people pulling the strings at the top. The ones who make the real decisions. These people down there don't do anything. President of the United States is one of the weakest persons in the world. There's a power. He could push the button. There's no buttons being pushed. There's no buttons being pushed. Those things are controlled by powers way beyond the average person's comprehension. People are living in like science fiction movies, Stanley Kubrick's world of the 1960s. They have no idea of how the world has changed. They have no idea of who runs things in Washington, D.C., how things are run at the Pentagon, how there are things in this world. It's like that Shakespeare line there, the things, Horatio, beyond your, what was the line? Beyond your imagination or wildest dreams or whatever the heck it is. You know what I'm talking about. It's too early to fixate and focus on things like that. Yeah. So anyway, it was interesting to see. It was kind of it was like a blast from the past, but it was surreal. In my mind, it was very surreal, because I was watching this thing and I'm thinking, now I won't watch, any nonsense because I don't have TV, and I'm not even going to watch anything on YouTube, as far as the rebuttals and the so-called fact checking and all that nonsense. But it was like, it was like watching something from October of last year or something like that. It's totally ridiculous, insane. And people just don't understand that times have changed. We're in a whole new surrealistic nightmare. And you got to look out for yourself and remember that nature's free. You're put on this planet as a human being, and the other key word is planet. And so when you're here, you can do whatever you want to. So enjoy the fruits of the earth, enjoy your five senses, enjoy the other humans that are on this planet, and enjoy the beauty of nature that surrounds you. And enjoy that thing that you have within you, which is called creativity, the ability of using your hands or what have you, your brain, to mold and manipulate certain things within the world. But you have to understand that at this particular juncture, that your politics is not pop culture. Politics is not the answer, and the cult of personality is going to change anything. That is an exercise in futility, and you're wasting your time, because you're only going to find happiness based on the five senses and the world that you've been put into and the people around you, the things that are real, concrete. All right, the stuff you can hold on to. All right, and that's it. Everything else this is all extra. This is fun and games. This is entertainment. All right, power grid goes down. This all goes away, but you still have your five senses, and you still have the people, around you, and you're still on the planet, and the sun's going to still rise and set. You see? And that's what you have to get. You have to get through your thick skull. So it's a surrealistic nightmare. The deeper you delve into it, but it's an impassable road back to empire, to Western civilization. Western civilization has collapsed. It's almost like you're trying to resurrect the Roman Empire, right? Or or the classical period of Greece, or the the Egyptian, period of time, um, ancient Samaria, the Mayan culture, or something. You can't do it. Those things came and went. They're gone. And just like the United States is gone. And people are like, "Ugh," they just won't accept it. The sooner you accept it, the better your life will be, and the better you can move forward. Remember, after the Roman Empire, there was Italy. Okay? It's not the end of the geographic location. And no matter what totalitarian thing that they try to put down and pull over people's eyes, the idea is that we have hundreds and hundreds of millions of people here, unlike in these other countries. Sometimes they only had tens of millions, So it's a whole different ball game. They're like I say, their plan is working, but they're using technology and mind control, mind manipulation. Mind control, I guess, sounds too woo-woo. Mind manipulation. All right. They're using technology and they're manipulating your mind. They're messing with your mind, basically. Right. Deceiving you, that's messing with your mind. Somebody lies to you, or, an elaborate lie, a con. They call it gaslighting, right? You've heard all these terms. That's what they're doing to you. But you just have to look the other way, or do what I did. Just cancel your TV service. Unless you have some kid and you want them to watch some cartoon thing. But that's just propaganda and destroy your kid's mind anyway. You'd be better off to go buy a stack of kids' books and find some old videos before they were into this crazy mind messing, revisionist history, full court press. But beyond all that, life hasn't changed, right? Life hasn't really changed. You do whatever you want. You're still the same person. That's the thing. And I don't think most people actually grasp that a politician isn't in charge of your life. They can make rules, just like the terms of services. They could make rules. Twitter had all kinds of terms and services and stuff like that. But once I stopped worrying about Twitter and stopped commenting and replying and things like that, well, then those terms of services no longer apply to me. See? When I quit Facebook, I didn't have to worry about Mark Zuckerberg at all. I didn't care what he did. Because his game was no longer my game. Right? I didn't have to play by his rules. I didn't have to follow his terms of service. And so sometimes I think people don't realize that. And it's the same with these government and these officials and stuff. They've got rules and regulations and stuff. But they don't, you don't have to follow every stupid rules and regulation. There are laws. There's natural law, which is really the only law that you should follow. Laws of nature. But I mean, you don't go out breaking the law. But then again, why would you? Right? But these little rules and regulation things, it's like, they're not laws. These are just things people come up with, little fiefdoms, little manipulations and stuff. You do whatever the heck you want to. Like I say, so yeah, if somebody's giving you a hard time, if you're on some social media, instead of complaining about the social media, just get off of it. And then guess what? They have no control over you, right? I don't know why people don't get that. It's so darn obvious. Yeah, so what? For the time being, you got to wear your mask when you walk in a grocery store. I put on a handkerchief. That's not doing a damn thing either, but they accept it. It's not doing a damn thing, right? Because I tried wearing like one of those N95 masks or some kind of heavy duty mask. I couldn't breathe in it. And so I just started putting a handkerchief over my, you know, Jesse James, your Wild West handkerchief, like you're robbing the bank, in the old days. Ride into town on horses. But I could breathe perfectly in it, which means if I could breathe, I mean, it's a two-way street. And I look around and I'd say the majority of people are doing the same thing. So yeah, it's a joke. Play their game for a while, Well, it's not like you got to live in a grocery store. I mean, I feel sorry for the person who has a job in the grocery store. That must suck. But then again, I'd advise you to do what I did, buy a cheap house. If you're in your 20s, or if you're a parent and you have somebody in a child in their 20s, tell them to buy a house. Buy a house like I did for 15 grand, get a mortgage. It's easy to get credit when you're young, right? Because you have no credit. So you build credit. You build credit in like 1 year or something like that. 1 or 2 years. You get a credit card and you use it and pay it off, use it and pay it off, use it and pay it off. Get another credit card, use it and pay it off. Then a year, 18 months, you've got like good credit, 3 credit cards, go to the bank, get a $500 loan and pay it off in 6 months in full, right? And then go find a house that's for sale for under $20,000 and go get a mortgage. And my mortgage, insurance, and taxes are less than $200 a month. Well, you can't even rent a house for that. I mean, rent an apartment for that. You can't even, it'd be hard to find an apartment to share in the city, with a couple of people that your portion would be $200, let alone have your own house with a yard that you could plant food that you eat half the year from. And that you're, on a neighbor in a street, right? This isn't the ghetto where I live. I could get anything you have, anything. I had TV. I could get internet. I could get cable TV, right? I could. Well, there's a doctor next door to me where I live. Doctor's office. Place across the street, I could buy paint and hardware supplies. I walk to the grocery store. It's only about a mile down the road, or mile round trip. Up the street, there's couple pizza shops. There's a convenience store just up the street. A bar beyond that. Takeout shop. Further up, sub shops, different things. And my house ended up costing like $15,000. My payment's $200 a month. So it's like, don't forget about all this nonsense they're trying to feed you. It's just nonsense. It's just utter nonsense. They're playing head games with you. So anyway, that's that. That was an interesting little speech last night. But take it. I hate to say this, but take it with a grain of salt, because I don't, focus on your life. And, if there is some kind of movement or so that, maybe that thing can morph into where people can live a better life, or, in certain states or something, it'll improve people's individual freedom, because some places, but I think most people already got it in their head that you don't want to live in New York or California, in certain Chicago, greater Chicago area. I mean, the whole state of Illinois is not that bad, but, Chicago area, and certain areas like that are just out of control. Atlanta's pretty messed up now. Even parts of Texas are kind of screwed up, though. But you could go around any major megalopolis, or whatever they call them. Yeah, you got to be a fool to be living in those inner cities and stuff. The job opportunities aren't even there anymore. Most people are doing their work through Zoom, and they're not going to bring it back. And I don't know what's going to happen to those places. Years from now, I'll be long dead. But years from now, those cities will just be ruins. And centuries from now, they'll look nothing more than, like the ruins in Greece or something like that. And it's time, I'm sure there were people in those days that were like me that were telling people this, but no one wants to listen to it. And I'm sure there's many people out there who will see this eventually over time, who will just feel the same way. Like, no way. But that is the way it is. And, all I can say is,
Good morning.
It's the beginning of the week, the first day of March 1st, 2021. And thank you for watching. And have a great week. I'll probably be back tomorrow. It's the thing I do. As long as the old ticker holds out or whatever the heck's going on with me. I don't know. I don't feel as bad as I have in some other days. So we'll just see how it goes. I'm just trying to eat healthy, do what I can, and, live life. So hopefully you do the same, and have a great day. Peace and prosperity and whatever you want. Cheers.